Hey there. No live streams until my ear's a little bit more healed up. You can't even see it when I'm looking this way, like when I'm normally looking at chat. Anyway, more important stuff than my personal life. Actually, some pretty fun stuff coming out of the White House. You know, the whole Dark Brandon meme anthology, because it's sort of branched out by now, is based largely in the fact that Biden is so dawdling and bumbling and ineffectual that the idea of him being some kind of like supervillain with you know, incredibly effective political strategy. I mean, that's the joke, right? I mean, it's because he's so inept that that meme took off. We've actually had some really good stuff happen recently, though. So, first off, you've almost certainly heard, but we finally have some student loan debt forgiveness. It's $10,000 off federal loans, 20,000 for those who received a Pell grant, um, and it's effective if you've made less than $125,000 in the past year. Or I don't know which year it refers to, but that's the income threshold. I don't know if they'd pull it from 2021 or 2020 or which year exactly. But yeah, you can look into that, which is good. Is it everything we wanted? No. It's still good though. Happy that it happened. I've never been too my enthusiasm for student loan debt forgiveness has always been more of an optics thing than like an actual strategy thing, because in terms of like forms of a debt forgiveness, or like helping out the needy in this country, it's not the most effective way by far. There are better you know ways to target people who need who need food or shelter or relief than student loan debt forgiveness, which is a little bit disproportionate in terms of like helping people more in like middle income areas and less so the very very poor. But people who need help, and it's also like an easy gimme. The White House can just do it itself. It's very good optically, and I'm happy that it happened. Don't mistake. I am happy that it actually did go through. But the interesting stuff isn't just the fact that it's gone through, it's the way in which it's gone through. Because following the announcement of the student loan debt forgiveness, the White House and Biden have been uncharacteristically aggressive against the Republicans in a way which is actually surprising to me. It is not uncommon for politicians to save the best for last, in the run up to the election season. If you have something you can do, sure, you can get it done in the first 6 months of your administration. By, then 18 months later, when the midterms roll around, people have mostly forgotten about it. Or you can hold it off till like 2 months beforehand. It's politically effective, if really annoying and predictable. But it's not just the loan itself, it's the way it's gone through. So, first of all, obviously, Republicans have immediately pitched a fit over all of this, and the official White House account started quote tweeting videos of them complaining on the news and indicating that a great many of them had had their PPP loans forgiven. So, for those of you who don't know, these were loans given out through COVID that ended up getting forgiven by the government. There are people who have had hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars um, in the PPP loans that have been forgiven, including a lot of congressmen, who would have been complicit in getting their own loans uh, forgiven by the government. And it goes on for some time, but the thread got quite popular, and I think this is indicative of something, which is that people are looking for some kind of like official aggression against the Republican Party. My biggest complaint with the Democrats has always been their abstemiousness, their insistence on like moderation, on bipartisanship, which is totally ineffectual in the modern political world with Republicans as your opponent. Republicans do not care about compromise. They do not care about like principle or policy. The only thing they care about is their own power. There is no way to negotiate with them. All you can do is exploit shared interests from time to time. That's really it. That's all you can get from them. The idea that you're going to be able to pull voters over from the Republican Party when they're obsessed over, I don't know, Hunter Biden's laptop, like when that's the kind of news that gets them going, the idea that you're going to be able to pull them over with effective policy, it's just not true. The best you can do is energize and excite voters on your own side, which is exactly what Biden is really bad at. you know, the 2020 election result exit polls speak for themselves. Most people who voted for Biden did so because they felt he was the most electable candidate, not because they were especially enthusiastic about him or what he had to offer. That lack of enthusiasm pulls people away from the voters' booth, especially during the midterms, whereas Republicans are constantly fired up over whatever inane conspiracy theory they're obsessed with this week. Um, so they're like a permanently energized base, which is why, in spite of them being like a third of the country, they can reliably compete with the left leaning and moderate people that you'd think would be like teaming up to crush them electorally. Unfortunately, no. You need energy for that, and it is the unwillingness of the the Biden administration's like they're just lack of interest in being aggressive advocates for good policy and really attacking the Republicans where they need to. That's always been my biggest complaint. There are limits to what a president can do. I'm not one of those people who thinks that Biden should have been able to just like snap his finger and like fix the country as soon as he entered if he wanted to. Even if Bernie Sanders had won the presidency, he still would have it still would have been quite frustrating, actually, I think, to see him sitting there like so many things continue to go wrong. But hey, just because he's the president doesn't mean he has the judicial or the legislative branch. So there are limits to what he can do. Um, the student loan debt forgiveness, Biden could do, uh, thankfully. And they're using the opportunity to, really levy some criticism here, which is great because the president is literally the head of state. There's a reason why Donald Trump holds such an incredible command over the culture of this country, and particularly his constituency. And it's because he never shuts up. He's always talking, always pushing for the things that he believes or pretends to believe in, pushing for the things he wants his constituency to believe in, at least. And that drives discourse, and that makes people believe things, and it gets people energized. So anyway, in addition to the White House, having fun here, which is great, by the way. Attack them directly. They deserve it. They're monsters. We also have a very real, completely unedited video of Joe Biden getting confronted on the purported unfairness of forgiving people's debts. Very Christian objection to Biden's policy.
Mr. President, is this unfair to people who paid their student loans or chose not to take out loans?
Is it fair to people who, in fact, do not own multi-billion-dollar businesses if you want these guys to get them all a tax break? Is that fair? What do you think?
Right. Unedited, as I said, really happened. Actually, I mean, leaving aside the fact that he's 100 years old and could barely choke out that answer, it's actually a decent answer. I mean, the idea that it's like unfair, like you can't do a good thing for these people because other people haven't had good things, which is ridiculous up the front. And the idea that there are Christians like actually getting up in arms about debt forgiveness. I mean, what do you think Jesus Christ had to say about debt forgiveness? It's ridiculous. But in addition to that, Biden's like I normally from somebody like Biden, I expect like a really milquetoast answer, but his answer here actually kind of strikes at the class dynamic of the issue here, which is that we wring our hands over whether or not we're not being too moderate, whether or not we're not tightening our belts enough when it comes to handouts or government assistance to the poor or to middle class people. But when it comes to the ultra wealthy, nobody ever talks about their tax breaks or their many, 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 many systems for extracting wealth from the government, through corporate handouts or subsidies or whatever. Nobody ever talks about those as a kind of unfairness. It's just a accepted matter of fact. Oh, well, why do ultra wealthy people have all of these additional mechanisms by which they can accrue wealth directly from the government? Why do they have all these extra options? Oh, it's just the way it is, But then it's like, well, okay, some kid in LA, like who's burdened by student debt, now has like $10,000 cut off it. Now we're asking like, well, was that fair? Well, fairness was never an issue to you, really. You just don't like it when something good happens to people who actually need it. Oh, I didn't mention it earlier, by the way. There's also an element of the student debt forgiveness that caps monthly payments, which is actually a banger. I forget the exact numbers there. I'll go over that when I'm streaming. My head still hurts a bit from the consequences of having my ear whatever they did to me, smash it with a hammer. So, good answer from Biden. Not going to pretend that makes him a communist or whatever. It doesn't. We can expect things to spice up a bit for the election season, but I still think that this is uncharacteristically direct. Speaking of uncharacteristically direct, whew, Biden actually called Republicans fascists. I'm genuinely surprised by this one. The full quote's here. Well, not the full quote, but a larger portion of the quote, right here. The MAGA Republicans don't just threaten our personal rights and economic security. They're a threat to our very democracy. They refuse to accept the will of the people. They embrace political violence. They don't believe in democracy. That's why in the moment, those of you who love this country, Democrats, Independents, mainstream Republicans, we must be stronger. Saved, voted to save our democracy. It's why Donald Trump is in the... here we go. It's not just Trump, it's the entire philosophy that underpins the, I'm going to say something, it's like semi-fascism. Oh, it's really good. Again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Biden is some kind of radical. Certainly not. He remains a milquetoast neoliberal. But even milquetoast neoliberals, and you'll know this if you talk to any number of them, there is a meaningful difference between liberals who are aware of and those who are unaware of the real threat posed by Republicans. And I've been clear about that for, a good long time now. Republicans are not just neocons who want, a higher Pentagon budget and poor people to have no welfare and, pregnant mothers to be fighting in the streets over who gets to, get the last, can of baby food so that when their forced birth takes place, the baby won't immediately starve. That's not just what they want. The modern-day Republican Party is pretty much entirely committed to ethno-nationalism at the very least, and something at least approximating a kind of American-grown neo-Nazism at the worst. The modern scapegoating of societal degeneration on trans people is following a pattern not at all dissimilar to what the real Nazis did with the Jews, in that you need a kind of you need a faulty element in society around which to direct the problems they say are taking place. The obsession with ethno-nationalism, which has only grown in recent years, the belief in some kind of elite academic liberal unit destroying America from within by promoting degeneracy, the recent attacks on education as a concept, even all the way down to the elementary school level. There's a lot, there's a lot to it. And I have never believed that we were going to have some kind of socialist revolution in 5 years or whatever to defeat the fascists. But I have believed that there is a meaningful difference right now between the liberals who believe that Republicans pose this existential threat, and the liberals who believe, that it's the end of history, that, nothing can really be done because nothing needs to be done, that everything will rebalance in time, that, history will orient towards the righteous path no matter what happens, because that's just how things work out. And behavior like this from Biden is a powerful force towards directing, tens of millions of Americans towards the understanding what we really are facing. That's very, very, very important. It's absolutely critical. There are not nearly enough socialists in America who are, in positions of power to do anything meaningful about Harper v. Moore or the death of democracy at the hands of Republicans. But this, at the very least, it forestalls, which is important. The more time we have, the better. A bit of an amusement. This was just a few hours ago, but Biden, who grows stronger the fewer neurons he has firing, it seems.
Borrow money to buy a home, to be able to start businesses, to do the things that need to be done. And I found it absolutely fascinating that some of the folks who were talking about this is big spending are the same people that got $158,000 in PPP money, including what's her name? That woman who believes in anyway, a whole lot of Republicans.
What a confident king. He went for the including when he had one example to give, and then he forgot the name of the one example, which presumably Marjorie Taylor Greene. Very, very funny stuff there. Anyway, I welcome the direct attacks. I love them. I delight in them, I might not see eye to eye with I guess really any Democrats on long-term economic policy or political goals or anything like that. But if there's a unifying belief that the Republicans are a threat worth attacking, that's something worth getting enthusiastic over, I think. So hopefully this continues, and it's not just a small uptick in aggression surrounding the student loan debt forgiveness, which, as far as I can tell, by the way, is and will continue to be thought of as a very popular a bit of policy there. One other thing, by the way, which I'm actually very enthusiastic about. White House issues new policy that will require, by 2026, all federally funded research results to be freely available to public without delay, ending long-standing ability of journals to paywall results for up to 1 year. Coverage coming on Science Insider. So this is fantastic. One of the biggest issues that we've had in research lately, there are a lot of them, by the way, but one of the largest is the lack of scientific availability. This is a frustration I have in almost every element of media that is adjacent to leftist or even liberal causes, which is that, right-wing rags, like you want to go on Newsmax or Daily Wire, Post Millennial, you don't need an account to read those articles, right? You can just go on there and read about how trans people are killing babies or whatever. But if New York Times, Wall Street Journal, just as moderate examples, you need accounts to read, and then a lot of more progressive orgs as well. Not all of them, and then you have like research, which of course basically all research is liberal or leftist oriented because conservatism is rooted in a kind of principled anti-empiricism. But it can be really difficult to like get a hold of research, which is, scientific literacy is kind of rooted in the availability of this material. It's really, really destructive to common knowledge that this stuff is just like hidden behind these ridiculous journalistic paywalls, like $50 to read this one thing. Like, no, it's disgusting. So now it seems that there's going to be a push for federally funded research to just be available right away. That's fantastic. Genuinely, like, phenomenal stuff right there. Really good trend to set, really good stance to take, really good path to walk down. Just really happy about that, There are a lot of problems with mainstream scientific research right now, in terms of like replicability. We have too many studies that are coming out because researchers, like their careers are kind of like get boosts in popularity. They define themselves based on the research they produce, and if it's like sensational enough, then maybe articles will be written about it, but that doesn't necessarily translate to quality of the research itself. And nobody wants to spend time replicating a previous experiment because that's not as like fancy. But then it turns out that a lot of these experiments can't be replicated because they were done under very specific conditions, or they just couldn't be replicated. Sometimes it turns out that earnestly attempted research, which seems to produce a result, doesn't end up saying anything meaningful. There are real issues with how we conduct research right now, but this is a good step forward. I'm just rambling at this point because I miss streaming, because I don't like taking breaks. But anyway, I'm going to go back to sitting here. I don't even know how my bandage looks on my ear, by the way, because in order for me to see my OBS preview window, my head isn't tilted at the right angle for me. I know you can see it now, but I can't. I hope it doesn't look like disgusting or something. It should just look like some gauze with a band-aid around it. Oh god, now I'm nervous. Wait, what is it? Okay, I pulled the OBS window over, and it does look exactly like that. That's exactly what it looks like. So that's cool. I don't think it looks bad. All right, get me out of here. Get me out.